Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. We're going to be talking about people who vanished while on the phone. Join me. Let's walk and see. First up, we have Angela Marie Hammond. On April 4, 1991, 20-year-old Angela Hammond was at a phone booth in Clinton, Missouri at around 11:45 p.m., talking to her fiancé, Rob Schaefer. The phone was located in a parking lot outside of the Food Barn store in the center of town near Jefferson and 2nd Streets. Angela had parked her car in order to make the phone call to Rob because she wanted to let him know that she was too tired to meet with him that night like they had planned and just wanted to go home, take a bath, and relax instead. The two lived together but had plans to meet somewhere after they both got out of work. While on the phone with him, she mentioned a mysterious pickup truck that had just started incessantly circling the booth she was in while she was talking to it. She became even more suspicious when the man driving the truck parked his car next to hers and got out, looking all around on the ground with some sort of light, as though he were trying to find something. Not knowing what was going to happen next, but having a bad feeling about the whole situation, Angela described both the man and his truck to her fiancé. She described the man as being filthy and bearded. Suddenly, Angela started screaming, and the line had gone completely dead. Rob was only a few blocks away and immediately threw the phone down, got into his own vehicle, and sped all the way to where Angela had been talking with him just moments earlier. On the way to the scene, though, he heard her scream and call out his name as he passed a truck that he noticed looked just like the one she had been describing to him before all hell broke loose. It was a late model 1960s or early 1970s green Ford F-150 truck. He followed the truck for about a mile down 2nd Street and Culvert Drive, but the very sudden shifting of gears broke down his vehicle's transmission, and his car stalled in the middle of the road as he helplessly watched the man drive away in the truck with his terrified fiancée inside. Angela was 4 months pregnant and was never seen or heard from again. Rob said that he had gotten a better look at the truck Angela had been taken into, and reported that it had a water decal or some sort of outdoor scene covering the whole back window, that it possibly had a white top and possible damage to the left front fender. Witnesses reported seeing a Caucasian male driving a similar-looking truck near the phone booth at the same time Angela disappeared. The man has never been identified, but was reportedly wearing overalls and a dark-colored baseball cap. He wore glasses and had a beard and mustache. A composite sketch was completed based on witness testimony, and though Rob was initially considered a suspect, he passed a polygraph test and was eventually ruled out. At the time of her disappearance, Angela worked in a bank and attended classes at Central Missouri State University in Warren, Missouri. Angela is a white female who had turned 53 years old on February 9, 2024, and was only 20 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was between 4 feet 11 and 5 feet tall and weighed between 120 and 140 pounds. She was wearing a white button-down shirt with black spots on it, black slacks, and white sneakers. In 1991, Angela's teeth were said to have been in excellent condition. Her nickname is Angie, and she has brown hair and brown eyes. She wears contact lenses and has a scar on her upper lip. Anyone with any information about this case should contact the investigating agency, the Clinton, Missouri Police Department, at 660-885-5561. Next up, Brandon Lawson. Brandon Mason Lawson was born on November 18, 1986, in Fort Worth, Texas, in the United States. His parents' names are Brad and Kimberly, and he has 3 siblings named Brittany, Kyle, and Billy. Brandon and his common-law wife, LaDessa, were high school sweethearts and had 3 children together. On the evening of August 8, 2013, 26-year-old Brandon had an argument with LaDessa at their home in San Angelo, Texas. And as per the agreement the two had made with one another, when things got too heated, one of them would leave and give both time to cool off, and that's just what Brandon did. Brandon called his father and explained the situation, saying he wanted to come and spend the night at his house. Brad, who lived 3 hours away, didn't think it was a good idea for him to drive so far away and tried to talk his son out of it. However, Brandon insisted, and they hung up with one another. Brandon left his house in his vehicle, a silver Ford F-150, at 11:54 p.m., but would never return home again. Brandon ran out of gas on his way to his dad's house, which was located in Crowley, Texas, and he pulled over on Route 277 between San Angelo and Bronte in Coke County. His brother, Kyle, only lived a mile away from his and Ledessa's house, and he asked him to bring him some gas so he could get back on the road. While talking to Kyle, Brandon claimed he was being chased by three men whom he later described as, quote, Mexicans in the neighborhood, end quote. Kyle wasn't sure he believed what Brandon was telling him, but didn't know why he would lie about such a thing either. Brandon had a history of drug abuse, but had been completely clean for about 6 months leading up to the night of his disappearance. However, Kyle asked him if he'd been using, thinking that maybe his brother was just hallucinating. Brandon denied being high, and after hanging up with his brother, Kyle called Ledessa and explained what was going on. She left a fuel container outside for Kyle and his girlfriend to pick up so they could put gas in it and bring it to Brandon. Kyle didn't have any money on him at the time, but planned to pick Brandon up, bring him to the gas station to get the fuel, and then drive him back to his truck so he could put enough gas in to get him to the station with his truck to refuel it properly. They drove to the location Brandon had given them and saw his truck parked on the side of the road, but they didn't see Brandon anywhere. A sheriff's deputy who had been contacted by a trucker showed up a few minutes later to check the vehicle out. During another call between Brandon and Kyle, after Kyle had gotten to the truck and saw the officer there, Brandon told him, I can see you. I'm right here. However, neither Kyle nor the deputy could see Brandon anywhere. When Brandon still hadn't shown up after several more minutes, Kyle thought it was possible that Brandon simply didn't want to have any contact with law enforcement because he had only recently learned that there was an outstanding warrant for his arrest. It was related to some drug charges issued to Brandon out of Johnson County years before in 2005. Many phone calls were made to and from Brandon's cell phone that night. The area had very poor cellular reception, so many of those calls either never went through or were dropped. It was at 12:30 a.m. that Brandon first called Kyle and told him he was out of gas. At 12:51, just after dialing 911, which we will discuss further in a moment, Brandon called Kyle's phone and left him a voicemail. Also, at 12:51, Brandon called Ledessa, but she didn't pick up because her phone had been left in her car that night, which wasn't too unusual. At 12:52, Brandon called Audrey, Kyle's wife, and said, Audrey, I'm bleeding. Those are the last known words ever to be spoken by Brandon Lawson. At 12:54, Kyle called Brandon, but got no response. And at 12:57, Brandon called Kyle back. Then at 12:58, Brandon called one of his neighbors. And at 12:59, Kyle called Brandon again. However, none of these phone calls would last very long, and none of them got Brandon and his brother any closer to one another. At 1:04 in the morning, the 911 dispatcher called Brandon back and tried to get some more information, but he didn't pick up, and she left a voicemail. At 1:09, Brandon called Kyle 3 times in a row, and then at 1:15, called him twice more. Those are the final calls made from Brandon's phone, and from 1:19 on, all calls to Brandon's phone went directly to voicemail, and no calls were ever made from the phone after 1:15 a.m. call to Kyle. Brandon's 911 call became a huge subject of debate and the hottest topic of the case overall when it was finally released to the public, and the internet all but blew up with theories and speculation about what was being said and what could have happened to Brandon. It's incredibly hard to understand what's being said, possibly due to the poor cell service in the area. Here's one interpretation of several circulating online of the transcript of his original 911 call that night. Many people hear different things, and mostly what's being said has never definitely been determined, but many sources believe this is what most likely had been said that night. We have no opinion one way or another, but here's the interpretation. Operator, 911 emergency. Brandon. Yes, I'm in the middle of a field. If they could just bring some guys over. Right here, going towards Abilene on the Bronte side. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here and guys chasing me into the woods. Please hurry. Operator. Okay, now run that by me one more. Brandon. I tried talking to him. I totally ran into them. Operator. You ran into him. Okay. Brandon. Just the first guy. And a background noise. Brandon. I got shot. Operator. Do you need an ambulance? Brandon. Yeah. No. I need the cops. Operator. Is anybody hurt? Strange noises in the background. Operator. Hello? 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 Brandon, very faintly. Help me. Now, in a slowed down version of the call, many people believe there's another voice talking, saying, get up and protect yourself. But there's just never been anything definitive to point in the direction of what actually happened to Brandon Lawson that night. There's so much rumor and speculation surrounding this case, but if we're just sticking to the facts, the case is still open and unsolved. Brandon's family continued to search for him in the area through the morning, but they never found any evidence as to his whereabouts. Law enforcement initially presumed that Brandon might have been hiding and on the run because of an outstanding warrant, but most people didn't find that plausible, given that he called 911 himself and specifically requested the dispatch send the police to the station. LaDessa and the rest of Brandon's family tried to search as much of the area where his truck was last known to be, but their efforts were hampered by many landowners who refused to allow them to search their property. Not a single shred of evidence was ever found that would even suggest what might have happened to Brandon. In the days following the disappearance, law enforcement officials conducted their own small searches in the area, but never found a heat signature nor a body. The sheriff of Tom Green County, a man named Nick Hanna, who was the lead investigator and a Texas Ranger at the time, said he believed that Brandon's body was probably in the desolate desert area off US 277, which he said was largely inhabited by rattlesnakes and feral hogs. However, when they honed in on that section of the grid and focused their searches in Bronte, despite utilizing 2 DPS helicopters, ATVs, Texas-R, 6 cadaver dogs, and 4 different agencies, no trace of Brandon Lawson was ever found. It's a mystery that remains today, with the many interpretations of the 911 call being the prime focus of the whole situation, with people thinking if he were ever to be found, what was really being said in that phone call would be the key to it all. And next, Joanne Marie Peterson. Joanne Marie Peterson was born on May 17, 1972, and was 10 years old at the time of her disappearance on February 19, 1983. Joanne disappeared from an area near her home in Fraser Valley in British Columbia, Canada, after having an argument with her sister. The girls had been out for a walk and their parents weren't home. They had an argument and Joanne started to cry, and her sister ran home and locked her out of the house. Joanne then walked to the penny pincher store that used to be near Vetter and Watson Roads in Sardis. She walked into the store and spoke to the clerk behind the counter before going outside to use the public payphone booth to make a call. Joanne called the operator to try and connect with her parents, and witnesses came forward reporting that they had seen a man inside the booth with her at the time. Joanne did manage to make contact with her mother during that call and asked her mother to come and pick her up. A man suddenly grabbed the receiver and told Joanne's mother that if she wasn't there within a half hour, he was going to call the police. Her mother made it there within 15 to 20 minutes, but Joanne was nowhere in sight. The case quickly went cold despite the best efforts of the RCMP and all the other agencies involved, and despite desperate pleas from Joanne's family for someone to come forward with Joanne or with news of what had happened to her. Her mother, Angela Riley, in a video released by the RCMP on February 19, 2008, 25 years after the disappearance occurred, pleaded with the man who had been with her daughter by saying, "Please come forward. That would relieve me of so much grief. Please come forward. As a mother, I am pleading for you to come forward. Please do that for me." The case remained cold, but a break came 3 years later when a letter dated August 28, 2011 was hand-delivered to Chilliwack RCMP. Corporal Tommy Hollingsworth from the Upper Fraser Valley RCMP said in an interview a month later in September of 2011 that there's certain details I guess that only this person would know, meaning it had been the man who had been with Joanne when she disappeared who wrote the letter, though none of the contents of it has been released to the public. More conflicting information came when the investigators said that they had been written an anonymous letter that they knew to definitely be from the mysterious man in the dark coat, the man who had last been with a little girl before she disappeared back in 2008, and that they weren't 100% sure that he had written the 2011 letter after all. In 2023, Just days before the 40th anniversary of Joanne's disappearance, Chilliwack RCMP announced that they had identified the man who had been in the phone booth with Joanne that fateful night. RCMP released this statement, quote, "Recently, police were able to identify this male and rule him out as a suspect. His identity will not be shared with the public at this time," end quote. Crime reporter John Daly, who's been following the case all along, said that it's perplexing to learn that the police have finally identified the man who was in the booth with the little girl, but that after all these years, they publicly stated that he wasn't a suspect or even a person of interest anymore. He goes on to say, "One can only wonder what they've told him and why it took so long to find him, and why he didn't come forward earlier. Or have they discovered who he was, determined who he was, and he's dead? We don't know." Now, there are obviously more questions than answers in this case, more than ever before, but the Chilliwack RCMP say that they haven't ever given up hope that they will find out what happened to little Joanne, and that they will never stop investigating this case until they have all the answers. John Daly said, "The police went to the wall to solve this case all those years ago, and it looks like they're prepared to go to the wall again." Anyone with any information into the disappearance of Joanne Marie Peterson should contact Constable P. Neitz from the Chilliwack RCMP Serious Crimes Unit at 604-792-4611, or to remain anonymous, you can call the Crime Stoppers Canada tip line at 1-800-222-8477. And another number you can call with information is that of the British Columbia RCMP at 788-290-3100. Well, friends, there you have it. What do you think of these mysterious cases of people who vanished without a trace while talking on the phone? I look forward to your comments, but please be friendly and respectful. Once again, thank you for joining us. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll see you a little further on down the trail. Be good to yourselves and one another, and tell your animals I said hi.